Hello, YouTuber Anthony Wall. I am not a lawyer. I am not a licensed journalist. But we know since founding, all sides of criminal and civil cases, lawyers, the interbranch, the intelligence, they could all be and were all criminally foreign influenced slash hyper criminally foreign influenced together before America's founders were born. Roles with the breaching method, a human fact treaty nature breaching method had only been that's all that was only allowed, only permitted, only known in replace of what had been sciences. Two, there's worse than criminal incompetence, for example, with uses of the difference between free speech and freedom of expression. Now, there are all kinds of predicate acts with facts and delusions with the experts on reason and psychiatry. Also, ones with badges, interagencies, and directors of agencies with worse than criminal incompetence, with multiple different kinds of federal criminals before they were caught, and with their family members and neighbors. Thaddeus Grabowski has collusion slash S with people from Wethersfield next to Hartford, Connecticut, next to Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut. The networks have wire crime acts and methods with names next to the state capitol. Increasingly, people make confessions about people named Casper who faked ties to me. Rick Cianfaglione said Brendan Leahy is involved, and his father. It's also women in their family that work with the triage at Harvard Hospital and triages across the country. There is a Jennifer Kanapicki that intelligence families near me have a John Maiano involved with them with sequence shifts and attaching me to fake ties, fake natures of ties to him, fake locations with him, and people tied to him. Involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, are people tied to him. I don't know, in other words, and he's got confessions. He said different things at different times. He has roles with investigators that are being and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw, and pretending others simultaneously. These are also people with houses and businesses next to Hartford Hospital through time, who have roles with names next to other hospitals. I mean, other campuses, and there are proofs that they're with other hospitals too. I don't know about next to it the way they are next to Hartford Hospital with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the houses and businesses involved with identity theft, fraud, things, journalists, their family members, their campuses, all collusions along roads and routes. Now, these are also people with various natures of journalists and their teachers, involved also with Native American intelligence. In other words, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, for example, he had co-defendants that in a 2006 district court case, and people tied to them before and after the World Trade Center attack. They had timed collusions with the attackers and with names at the World Trade Center and spots next to it, including the morning before it and the night before it. I was there in a hotel next to the World Trade Center attack. Um, I used to box growing up. You remember my fights, Josh? I um I have to get a professional boxing license. I hope to get one. God willing. But I was in the night before, in the morning before the World Trade Center attack. I was in the court next to it, and I was in a hotel next to it. And then we drove home, and I experienced how the World Trade Center attack was hit. Now, before and after the World Trade Center, before the World Trade Center attack, I didn't know his name yet. A former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. He was involved with a Dean Judd and his family and other deans and principals, intercities, and people with the schools who have rules of predicate acts with facts and a method of them that they don't even understand. Relative to they have replaced with James Madison's communicate. They had our founders, the only one we know the name of for certain was James Madison. because they had to leave that to classify for themselves too, because they didn't have free speech during their lifetime. Because everyone's speech, everyone had to pretend other too, to an extent. Otherwise, that body was sensed and it was adapted to. Before America's founders were born, there was slavery entrenched even northern colonies and southern colonies. Therefore, the replacing of what nature communicates with black people's whites of eyes, how we are an individual human species body of a whole bunch of individual bodies. And there are totally different individual species bodies, each one made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies. And we are able to discern that is neither our species nor the other species nor all us together generating this. It is a distinct identity of value/value progression. And it also shows us that it is generating all group differences, or it shows us that we are using systems other than its own and how it communicates about positive and negative. For example, showing us that identity has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously for different reasons from why and how values have relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, but also non-distinctly from how they do. And why they do is because everything is its identity of relationship to itself. But then it has three identities of relationship to itself, where the rest of its complete nature comes with that extent we could discern. For example, again, how we are an individual species body of a whole bunch of individual bodies, and there are other individual bodies of a whole bunch of individual bodies. And so we could discern there is a scientific need to discern the scientific value of an identity of value progression that is observable. It's hyper invisible, but still discernible, even when looked at with relativity to the parts of speech of English grammar and of the languages being about the invisible, but still discernible. They come also with our ability to discern the hyper invisible, but still discernible. For example, this is why and is how. We need to appreciate more than one word for a verb. A predicate is a main verb. That's another word for a verb. A participle. I refer to them as the participle natures. I hadn't read them referred to that way anywhere. I refer to that way because every identity has a semi-nature relationship to its complete identity relationship to itself. And the only increasing value of that here, or it is forced away from here, as a special difference here, at Earth, because it's showing us Earth has a special difference. And nature's identity communicates answers with it, just like it does with black pupils, whites of eyes, showing us simultaneously birds, fish, even insects look like they have two eyes. We have quality aspects and consciousness. Even insects have an extent of consciousness. You can approach them nicely and things like, and you can freak them out. And they know that you're coming after them. There's an extent of consciousness that is shared because it is generated not by us nor them, but is all things anyway. I need bread, vaccine. So pantheism was more probably about many names for the one individual identity of value progression per science. It shows us it is functional, being hyper invisible, but still discernible. And this is what we're discerning. We're not just with why and how we need more than one word for a verb, and know how the present participle and the past participle are about the present and the past, and we don't have a future participle. Those are three distinct identities of relationship to itself. This identity of forever nature, the past, what is active, and the future. But the future is hyper invisible, but still discernible part of itself. Like we know we could discern the body, the sign, the seasons share. Ones that aren't even here because we half already know it, and we were shown it. We know an extent of the past that is gone, but it is still here value increasingly. But see, we have appreciated values and systems, tactical ulterior from the individual species body of individual life, and trying to discern that identity of value progression that is generating all group differences and or showing us when we are using systems tactical ulterior from its own. A hyper foreign name is exploited, and there are proofs that it is still exploiting. It's beneficial to countries A through Z to assume that it is still exploiting, even if it's not. In other words, from some ancient times, there were impositions, there was a breaching method entrenched that right through America's founders, our founders did not have free speech. They had to leave this to classify for themselves and for us. But the experts on the sciences want to use any and every piece of knowledge they have to get over on sequence truth, to get over on principle treatments as I should be. Forgiveness is because they are only capable of this, because everyone at campuses A through Z, sickly distinctly, but sickly non-distinctly too. And the difference of that is used by the breaching method, but through ourselves. When people, debate principle treatments, James Madison and the founders behind him counter-extorted even George Washington. Everyone was extorted and counter-extorted, including James Madison. He did not have free speech. But his plan is the only plan that can get us or any country free. But none of us have been free. That's the first thing we have to understand. So, America's greatness, too, the only reason that James Madison's plan was possible is because the Native Americans were still not beaten by that system that already had Europe. Their foundings were while the breaching method was entrenched distinctly, but non-distinctly from how it was entrenched since before America's founders were born, with slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies. And they're still framing our founders for that. And again, the only founder we know the name of is James Madison. But they're also framing all the presidents / chiefs for that too, like George Washington. They couldn't leave honest records about themselves. There was a breaching method that had also overt criminal enterprises, private ones, only allowed to be fathomed. In other words, and the differences of guilt, because it hides behind and through that, and how the countries are shared here and there with campuses. Campus Marcias, they used to refer to as the ancient campuses of the ancient republic for which we stand, which has stood abridged since before modern religious messengers were born. This should have been clear. Instead, people made principal treatments by empire or that, roles with the breaching method hiding behind and through that. In other words, worse than criminal incompetence. Forgiveness because worse than criminal incompetence taught the teachers who are teaching the students. Then they want to have respect. They're supposed to blame slavery on the human fact achieving nature breaching method. We don't even have to be a lawyer. Let a lawyer deny that. So you guys don't get people onto paper properly. And they've been faking paper. A bunch of people with the Connecticut corrections offices and the judicial branch offices have collusions with people at each of the campuses I went. These are people that pretend conversations with people in it. They pretend that people made conspiracy theories. So this is how and why we have to keep hearing delusions rock, criminally and foreign influence, people pretending passions and emotions as the same people right through administrations. The only ones allowed to be heard. In other words, what we're supposed to blame is the hyper foreign. And then for deny it on paper. You think honest science, That's why the suburbs there were homes built before America's founders were born. Again, there was slavery entrenched, northern colonies, southern colonies. You're going to tell any student that, that was about a tea tax. In other words, that was against tyrants. You guys need to pay attention to what the breaching method that was entrenched. Native Americans against Native Americans, they tactically denatured everything, only allows that. Oh, well, that's what we do. So that's what we do. So we do the system and knows we have to deal with these people, and that they're going to be good people. Then they're going to jump into people's conversation. They can't help it. They're going to speak anyway. They're going to pretend they have free speech to an extent where they don't. They're going to pretend they're for free speech. They're going to have to keep more and more using the phrase freedom of expression. They already put fake transcripts against us at each age of fact-keeping nature. A whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital with the Institute of Living and with the campuses interstates tied to them in inter-cities of Connecticut and intra-cities, inter and intra-campuses. They have collusions with triages, with multiple courts, prosecutors, judges, their family members, victims, advocates, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and with victims, time collusions with that. A whole bunch of people on Valley Crest Street tied to that street, conjunctive to it, involved with people named Tomorrow, involved with the World Trade Center attack, and with multiple courts, families, and all along Route 3, in conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices, involved also with the educators of a Joe Tomorrow, with identity theft, fraud, slayings against kids that they didn't even have in their classes. Then the exceptions, they put fake and changed communications for them. They were still forcing people with the name. There's reportedly, I never talked to anyone in my family about this. In other words, there are people with the name O'Connor who have roles with intelligence families from Hartford, from New York, and people all along Route 175 and next near where they reportedly live or lived. People, if they're tied to a Thomas O'Connor. Various ways I recorded people on all sides of the campuses I went to, involved with little tricks, where they're putting predicate acts with facts in databases, collusion /S with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. And as people with the houses and businesses next to Hartford Hospital, increasingly collusions intercities and intra-cities with the campuses I went. A DeMorrow family, I went to a campus 1 year on Valley Crest Street. Off of Valley Crest Street, this little campus. I went in kindergarten. And there was no DeMorrow. I never saw Joe DeMorrow there or John DeMorrow there. The only kind of time I ever had a word of conversation or so, and I was never around Paul DeMorrow. The only time I had a word of conversation with him was over the phone. He confessed his brother involved with the police. He doesn't know, in other words, and DeMorrow's market, where it is now and where it used to be. And he doesn't know the extent of what he confessed with that. Because Wethersfield police increasingly, like Mendez police, attached me to fake conversation with themselves, which is simultaneously themselves recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed collusions with other police departments and with their own, where they stack falsified police reports and put a charge with no writing, and then they switch names of officers so they communicate that they're extorting you, and they're involved with behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. And like pretending just because people are experts, they know things that are real that are not. But while their delusions raw too. Psychiatry is worse than criminal incompetence, changing this principal thing about James Madison's plan and how they had to force the other founders to help them, even though they had to stay roles, even with slavery, northern colonies and southern. At the same time, they had to fight against slavery. But the North is the only one that had the industry. If they tried to say that they were fighting about it, like, there was a hype. There were foreign countries never stopped here and there being grouped roles with private industries, private criminal enterprises on charge, pretended other than that, incapable of affording discerned what nature was is showing at those locations their value, and from them, live progressions, negative value nature progressions, rather, and nature has been demonstrated. So Connecticut Interbranch has been refusing to identify themselves, and they put fake and changed phone transcripts and mail. Whole careers of the interbranch are kept criminally poor and influence, tactically delusions raw, while they're wasting time. There's more than one retired mayors from Wethersfield, other cities. I don't know why you would say that about the Chinese restaurants. It's the security. There's next to a Chinese restaurant is a place associated reportedly with the congressperson. I forgot Joseph Lieberman. I don't know him. I don't know his wife. His wife and people associated with that. In other words, and Mike Pandol has roles with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. Also with people named McCord, who have roles with Washington, D.C. and New York with the World Trade Center attack, through other people, through other past predicate acts roles with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and their roles with people named Tomorrow that also said Scalora was their cousin. Wethersfield police also had recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed the name Scalora is involved with them with predicate acts, with evidences, and with them switching names, and with predicate acts on my street. I can't get them onto paper. It's the Wethersfield police. And Della Fera is a father. I had to call this guy years later because there were people that planted evidences on my street with multiple judges tied to the same house, involved with a Phil Colo, and with other people I don't know the name of, who intercities had roles with some untimely deaths, and a Robert Rodriguez. And see, he brought that up to me on Facebook. People that were confirming things to me on Facebook, and then they took my Facebook pages. They make all kinds of confessions and leak things. It's easier. It's so easy to keep whole careers of the law criminally poor and influence. This breaching method has been doing it since before each modern country's founders were born. To rise above locations, areas, and states, still the captive tools of a hyper-foreign breaching method, that which had non-distinctly too, slavery, northern colonies, southern colonies, which is only one of the crazy things, excuse me, that can be used to show that it knew it was consciously made everyone rolls with itself as systems tactical ulterior from the human species body of individual bodies and how it's group, appreciating how it generates all group differences, or shows us when we're using systems tactical ulterior from natures with answer /s. So there are people with there are workers and people that own apparently the businesses, and through the sale to different owners, the security at the corner of South Steen Highway and Town Line Drive has people involved, like with the name Kerr, Demoro, Colo, and people from other countries, and people involved with fire departments. There's an Inspector Mike too, and there's a Mike Della Fera, Mike Kerr, have roles with fire departments and Town Line Drive with identity theft fraud things. I never saw them around campuses. These are people that pretended behind my back to people that they know me, where police forms and intelligence use right to lie, but they don't have the right to lie. A Della Fera family, they have a whole bunch of brothers. I only know the names of two of them, but they have probate court judge in their family, and there are other probate court judges involved with 2 Route Highway and with them, in other words, they got involved with needs to hide live progressions. Then they collude on all sides of people's houses from other areas. I never saw them in my area in my life. Increasingly, they have roles with organized crimes, with people involved with falsified police reports, fake conversations with me as Wethersfield Police, and as people with New Britain Superior Court. And they change and fake things since I was a kid. It's recorded. These are people on off the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices in Wethersfield. And the corrections offices, Wethersfield, Harper Town Line, no, because that's exploited too with his preaching method. Shows them that they need to hide live progressions, pretend to be against things that there were already collusions with. The voice is speaking about Congress. For example, these are names next to the state Congress building in Hartford, increasingly with Paul DeMauro is connected to everything I said. John, what did you say about Paul DeMauro? Delafair family courts in the Chandler sister, you say who pretended instances of pretending how to. I don't know the Chandler sister. She was brought up in confessions to me about uses of location tied to her, location/s, like a Robert Rodriguez and a Mike Roberts has roles planting evidences with educators of mine behind me. I never had a class with him. And people that were in my class involved with all sides of criminal and civil cases, involved with, predicate acts with kids. These are people tied to child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, ones who were first forced. And these were our families involved roles with it. Channel 3 WFSB News attached me to fake conversations with them. It has something to do with their roles with the names Delafair along Route 3 and conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices, and their roles with town lines and all kinds of investigators, where they have scams against each age and nature kid. They have collusions with the families that are security at the campuses too. All kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders that they involved also along Route 3 with their roles with federal evidence, with predicate acts, organized crimes at my campuses. Everyone speaking through others. And they're leaving out the off-campuses names like former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members. So that's why we need to get them on paper into branch. John DeMauro said it. He was begging me to go to the site of Caldor, which is now a Walmart, off of Town Line Drive, when I was like 7th grade. I didn't know his brother in grammar school. They tried to make one fake exception, which is also like the only time I ever talked to my teacher. I remember I wanted to go to outer space, and then I was happy he didn't get killed. But I'll tell you, there are people involved with him with the intelligence and his family members on Facebook too, with intercities, people from Central Connecticut State University and New Britain, Connecticut, and all sides of it. Our intelligence families, they have collusions with federal agencies and foreign countries, and they have World Trade Center attack roles tied to motivated to their roles with organized crimes there together, including Wethersfield Police attached me to fake words ever with one of the Mendez police brothers, who's also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with multiple falsified police reports for the same arrest when I caught them forcing child abusers, leaders of kids, and other natures of organized crimes with them, including sexual and medical offenders of kids. These are delusions wrought people too, speaking about what they think about medicines and what science is. Quinnipiac University has roles with Fred Grisette, with Rick Cianfaglione, with various courts, judges, and prosecutors putting predicate acts in databases, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, as people colluded A Frank there, I didn't know he had ties to Rick Faglione until after they graduated. He made all kinds of confessions and demonstrations. There are roles with the intelligence on the sides of Central Connecticut State University and added. Also with people at other campuses, intercities and intra-cities and interstates and internationally, but also with the hyper foreign. They're still there too. That's why from America to Russia to Ukraine, the suburbs they look almost exactly alike. And they were built while there was a torture, extortion, factory nature, slavery method on everyone before cars. We still have that as the suburbs. The cities were designed to have most of the stuff knocked down, and the big, huge mansions turned 2-3 family house, and there were a museum like Harriet Beecher Stowe Mark Twain House, also involved with the syntactical possession of everyone. Where and how that's one of the things that it is, where they how they replace what both our founders communicated to have communicated about what the breaching method did, reassigning black people's rights of eyes, communications, or sent and only allowing either that or role sensing for the breaching method. People don't even realize they're sensing for the breaching method, but and that would have changed, but people don't follow mandated law offensively properly. They have why you call me hater? What do you think I'm doubting? John, you said, have you recorded the ties to Wethersfield mayor, Chinese restaurants on off South Dean Highway? You said that. I didn't know what you said. I didn't say Chinese restaurants off South Dean Highway. I don't know what you're talking about. I know whether there's a Mayor Gold who's involved with a Joe Aiello, there are child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart who confessed, recorded, could demonstrate, confirmed to me that a Joe Aiello and his sisters and his family are involved with them, with the businesses and houses next to Harvard Hospital and Hartford, with campuses intercities, and with child abusers in my area that used to live here. These are also people involved with, putting fake medical drugs in databases, fake conversations in databases with prosecutors and judges and their family members. Increasingly the same, that has something to do with their roles with the Wethersfield Community Center. And people next to it named Jody Pierce are involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with a Paul Abted and his family with the Hartford Hospital, and with clubs and places along Franklin Avenue and Wethersfield Avenue, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and all kinds of evidences, organized crimes with evidences in the difference of guilt at the campuses or off them. These are increasingly people with the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices involved with them with medical and sexual offenders of kids, including female roles with it, where everyone's speaking, well, I didn't know, because that's what they're saying. They're, in other words. So they have been refusing to identify themselves legitimately into branch. And Fox Connecticut News is recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirmed through different ownerships to roles with intelligence next to their location, have roles hiding things from Judge Napolitano and their connections with this other stuff. Increasingly, people with the spots next to Fox Connecticut News have roles of all kinds of natures of organized crimes and time collusion /S, putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me with the same house /S, increasingly involved with the conversation that they keep forcing me, trying to have me have with other people that I didn't even have at all with them about, because that's one of the crime methods the interbranch does. Force people to speak for others or get people alone and just fake things. Just totally fake things. Change anything else. All kinds of organized crimes and delusions that we're going to observe associated with the voices in Congress and with their treatments of time, with pretending passions and emotions that way. In other words, they're trying to waste time every time they go there. That's all they've ever seen to do. A breaching method taught them how about principles. Many of the things people learn, but that's precedence. Well, it's because the breaching method made it precedence. That's why we have to get them on paper, one name in sequence. A bunch of people. There's a Joshua Julian. FBI Director Robert Luskin has a Joshua Julian and has others on my street involved per him on Facebook, involved with people on the Facebook page of a principal upskirt nature's Facebook page of his campus. And they have some Mendez police involved, intercities with the campuses, and some other police that have been switching and forging names. And they have their kids in their roles with the Parks and Recreation. Increasingly, people with the Parks and Recreation have drugs and medicines crimes, and with the Eastern States Narcotics Drugs Task Force has all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes in Wethersfield police phone families, planting evidences on people's houses around them, and next to them the same thing though, because there is a hyperforeign, whole bunch of other countries at the same exact time involved. There are people with Russia involved with a Mayor Gold and his family who have been putting fake things in databases. Joe DeMoro said that there's an Eric Klotz, and the FBI also demonstrated there is an Eric Klotz, and people involved with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, involved with them at the corner of Fairlane Drive and Griswold Street. Also, people with syntax regarding that corner or relativity to it have roles with shipping locations and managers at stores involved with databases used the way the breaching method used databases of the Republic for which we stand since before religious messengers were born, demonstrating that the sciences have been abridged since some ancient times. But see, even perception of the sciences is forced to be self-valued out of sequence. Beginning of the Old Testament, for example, it says only defend. Where the name right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. And that's before the part of the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the Quran also has a part that says all that matters is if someone's is to be a good Muslim, is if someone's gonna be honest about their name for the scientific value of the identity of value progression. For example, that which is generating totally different individual species bodies, made up each one of a whole bunch of individual bodies. Doesn't say that. I'm translating and making an example. But it says it qualifies it too. It obligates Muslims not to pray in a mosque for the slightest reason. It says all that matters is someone's honest about the scientific value of the name. See, everyone makes and keeps the reads things out of sequence as the breaching method. As the religious books, they knew that there would be collusions. Everyone with their differences. The suits and ties, counters, exceptions, religious differences. Oh, but this guy's an expert on the religion. How come no one even knows about what it says up front? See, the Congress pretending that people are experts and they should be listened to, only to hide. They know that experts are involved with predicate acts with facts with them, or they could discern it and sense it about themselves. A breaching method shows them how to read the laws, how to read American history. We have to understand how and why James Madison is the only founder that we know the name of. But what about John Bean from Highcrest? Was brought up to me by a Robert Rodriguez involved with some untimely deaths and planting evidences on my street. I didn't respond to him both times he was on my street and tried to interact with me. Then he confirmed it on Facebook. Then they took my Facebook page. Also, people confirmed about their rules with the body dumping spot and their extended family with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso and the roles with federal evidences crimes and names next to the state judicial branch offices. People named Faenza I only know them in that context. And right across the street from where one of them lived was a Sal Civiello, increasingly tied to mayors from Wethersfield and people involved with identity theft, fraud, slander. He sought me out to demonstrate. He had to hide libel grudge. I didn't even have communications with them. One time I went to a Cub Scout meeting, and they just looked at me. So in other words, that's fine. You don't want to be, friends. That's fine. But then years later, he has a roles with Eric Jensen, and people make confessions about their roles on town 2 Rod Highway and conjunctions to it and to that. Increasingly, like a Brian Bonin has roles also with these names along Route 3 and with people from other countries involved with like some mescaline and different kinds of drugs with a Ray Cololo too, with his syntax on YouTube, and people with the Facebook pages of the campuses involved with drugs and medicines crimes with the kids and with the counters to such. They have people with the Department of Children and Families who were and are involved with a bunch of families that run the prisons that went to learn to be about prisons and things like that. And they had sexual circles also involved with Gail King. People involved with that. With the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with all sides of criminal and civil cases and of depositions, including his own and his co-defendants' depositions. And people involved with that have involvements with foreign and domestic military before and after the World Trade Center attack. As ones increasingly, Connecticut had roles with the World Trade Center attack. Some Mendez police forced a Saudi friend of mine to collusions with them, with my neighbors, and their roles with their cousins who knew them before I did. I didn't even know that. I'm learning out more and more about that. So, some Mendez police and people named DeMoro and Scalora and Cololo have collusions with the Scaloras interstates and internationally. They have rules with the different departments at Central Connecticut State University, where all the campuses are involved with organized crime methods. Whole methods of them are recorded. Who do you live with? Tied to which? This is the Wethersfield Police. They brought up the name Cololo, and Whiting Forensics brought up the name Phil Cololo, and Joshua Julian confessed on it. People on my street involved with him with organized crimes, with the kids, on Facebook page, and fake news predicate acts, I should refer to it as. And organized crime with the news associated with people associated with and as one's name Joshua Julian. Also increasingly involved with Facebook people. What do you care about who's in my house? You're trying to threaten me. You're supposed to say get the child abusers on paper then. Get those dirty cops in courts, people on paper, one name in sequence. Don't leave them keep playing games. I caught them with names next to the campuses, intercities, and intra too, with organized crimes with the people at the campuses. Collusion /S. Fake ties too, because Whiting Forensics has roles planting evidences with a whole bunch of people involved. Do you know this Phil Cololo? Because I never had a class with him, never saw him on the inside of a campus in my life. I saw him one time from the outside of a campus. There are proofs that someone took my picture from a distance, and he was being handed a gold watch from one of the principals. That recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, had people in a conversation with her that I never had a class with that were involved with the World Trade Center attack and with a Joshua Stryker, intercampuses, intercities at Trinity College too. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. When a Trinity College has roles with people from unions and with fire departments and with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Involved also with the family members of interbranch at the judicial branch offices and corrections offices further. And they have you guys like Josh Connor on here. So in the other house, people with the name Smith, they brought it up. The Wethersfield police brought it up. And then they demonstrated it. That's why they're playing games. They have people I don't know the names of at Harvard Hospital involved with a guy who with legal crimes falsified medical papers, roles with them with transcripts, wire crime acts, mentioned digital crimes. They're hiding, faking, and changing digital evidences. These are people with writing forensics through time who are intercities, including medical campuses and fire campuses. A bunch of fire department families hide live progressions because everyone spoke, pretend they could speak for reason. They pretend they could speak for justice, pretend they could speak for morality. But when it comes down to it, they can't do it without relying upon other fake stuff being put into their databases. We're going to pay attention to these are people next to the campuses in Hartford too. Hartford's sick. They still, in other words, they get distinctly from Wethersfield. The founding locations, they still have other communicated to them than our founders communicated for us to have communicated about those places and for themselves. They had this declassified. This is known. Instead, they have their knowledge of good and evil. Oh, we're expert researchers. This is what we have. This is what it was about. There was slavery entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies. That's what it was about. The difference is the changing what black people's whites of eyes communicate or sensing anyone not roles. So we're going to need to get these people on, like these Delafair, we're going to need to get them on paper, Josh. You know them, Josh Connor. He has roles with fire department, planting evidences. I don't even know what fire department what that was. Would they have people come on my street and put fake ties to me, fake nature ties to me, and people I don't know at all that were never on my street who had to pretend that at the same time with them, like the Joshua Julian, involved with digital crimes in the Britain Superior Court, Wethersfield Police, also with the Joshua Schumack and his mother, involved with religious offenders of kids and some black KKK into religious spots, different types of religions. They're involved with sequence shifts too, making people say things mean to other people about their religion because they're using it as a weapon. If they don't say it, they just frame them anyway. That's one of the reasons that they're so sick, fake. The only voices allowed to speak in support of Palestine, for example. A bunch of fake collusions with the people attacking them. No side has representation, though. That's why everyone stays evil. You guys don't follow mandated law. You get that police chief Cintron. A police chief Cintron, a little coward. He's making me have to go tell everyone about Mazzucato Bakery in that corner some years before they were there. The police chief Cintron has organized crimes with his family and intimate ties with the same house /S near me, involved increasingly with them with falsified police reports. And they brought it up in their confessions over the phone too. They brought this up too. One of the officers said there's people with the name Scalora involved with them with federal evidences crimes. And he's going to pretend, get them off fake ties to me, the Scalora family. They don't know me. And they have roles with the same house, with other extended, that they said that was one of their extended family members. And they have an extended family member increasingly involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, and with them, their own family. And this is nothing personal. These are multiple police departments involved with them criminally, personally. That's why they're fishing for things to cover up. You gotta have to get them on paper and fear God not to, Josh. Why would you play games? These are also people that have been planting evidences and messing with the sense and sensibilities of the people at the boxing gyms I went to. There's a Dave involved with the military and his roles next to the state corrections offices with a Joe DeMauro and a Ray Color, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He's involved with them with various natures of federal evidences crimes and with their educators too, putting fake things in databases with them and databases with them behind people's backs. They also have roles with people with the parks and recreation and a body dump and next to a body dumping spot involved with. There used to be a title house. They have some kind of syntax regarding a title house, and they were making things up to their roles with West Hartford through time. And the town lines like New Britain, West Hartford, all sides of Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, increasingly has collusions with people with intelligence families that used to live near me. And there's the family that is involved, timed collusions with them, with the child abusers, with their extended family members. Also, Sandy Hook campuses confessed them involved with a prison there too, with some child abuser they forced. They had roles forcing that before the principal child abuser was caught anyway. And they have roles with the serial killers, body dumping spot, and the names next to it as the same names. And their cousin, report per them, ones with the name Scalora, they were next to the World Trade Center the night before it. And they have collusions with also people interstate. Connecticut uses of it too since. People from Connecticut have been falsifying evidences and partaking with predicate acts at Central Connecticut State University with one's intercities. A whole bunch of people tied to directly and indirectly have roles with Detective Samuda with sexual medical offenders of kids from Wethersfield per them. A Heather Hansen reportedly told my father that she was raped by a Joe DeMoro. A Joe DeMoro, he recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that he involved her with organized crimes, with evidences, and with co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. He didn't say that, but that's who those people were. Dawn LeConte is the daughter of a John LeConte, is one of his co-defendants in 2006 district court case. Thaddeus Grabowski has roles at Fox Connecticut News, and next to it with an Allison Mulcahy. I never had a word of conversation with her in my life. And her boyfriend, per him, Mike DeMay, has roles also with syntax regarding sleeping with her, like yelling it out that he was going to sleep with her in a tent that was in the backyard of a Rick Faglione, who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed there's a people with the name Brian Silver and people from New Britain involved with the New Britain Superior Court. He with this Brian Silver, and there's a Judge Smith who had been speaking fake things in records with them, has something to do with their role. A whole bunch of people on off Town Line Drive and Hangdog Lane have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, force, tricked, hurt, and persuaded. They'll tell you this. You have to ask them correctly. Those are all people that I only know seeking me out to plant things, and their ties to body dumping spots and timed like untimely death rolls. It has something to do with like with So please get them on paper, one name in sequence. Wethersfield police said that Wethersfield Pizza is involved with them with wire crimes. I don't know what Stephen Stocco said to them. And I never saw Maria Fazina on a campus in my life. After I was in the newspaper for boxing, they had to hide live progressions. So they made her seek me out and make a bunch of confessions and demonstrations to me regarding her neighbors too, increasingly collusions with that. Like with this Stephen Stocco and people with the state judicial branch offices that have been identity theft, fraud, slanders with people putting fake things in databases. At my campuses, I never had a word of conversation with. Then they go pretend other. No, I mean, people that weren't even in my classes, people that were in my classes, the difference of that is explained too. That's recorded. You guys don't follow mandated law for the interbranch. A whole bunch of people with East Hartford intelligence also have roles with a whole bunch of natures of organized crimes and federal evidence of crimes, identity thefts and frauds, pretended for other legitimate reasons, involved with the Wethersfield Police Chief Cintron, and a Mazzucato bakery and a modern pastry involved with the syntax of a John Maiano, is one of the people that from other areas that one of the houses involved with it recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with it. And this is before and after the World Trade Center attack. I asked for help before the World Trade Center attack because of people involved with the courts and the FBI director. I didn't know his name yet. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, their family member, their lawyer, increasingly people tied to spots associated with his lawyer's office, which is not far from the Harriet Beecher Stowe Mark Twain house. And they have roles with East Hartford, with with former Governor Malloy. Also had roles forced with the Principal Bean, and Principal Bean said there's a Mike Levine. Other people recorded Mike Levine also involved with them on off town line drive locations and along Route 3, involved with organized crimes with little kids, child abuse with little kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders, intercities. And with child abusers, leaders of kids, families involved with that years apart, and people with the FBI director, Robert Luskin, involved with the, what are they doing with Mike Levine and that side entrance to the Walmart, which is we used to be Caldor, because that's one of the things that they have demonstrated non-verbally is connects the people involved with the World Trade Center attack and the Saudi collusions of Wethersfield police, forcing collusions with multiple falsified police reports for the same arrest, and they put a charge with no writing. And all exceptions show that the writing is criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and they're switching names and sequences. And you entertain that, you're entertaining. In other words, oh, why didn't you say about that? Get them my paper, one name and sequence. In other words, the whole career of this Mendez family and of other police with them. These are also some black KKK Confederate flag team, their sources, a whole bunch of people with their roles with other countries and their roles with the campuses. Get me off the fake conversations with this Joshua Stryker. Do you know this Joshua Stryker? Josh Connor. This is Joshua Stryker. Are you Joshua Stryker Connor? Because you're the little coward. We're gonna get you little cowards into branch on paper with the rest of the child abusers like this Michael Breen you brought up. Vaccine. And make sure that Dave doesn't pretend that in other words, I had no conversation, I didn't have a word with him. Hand me a guitar, and then he told me to get back. They went back to him. I was looking at him. That's why, in other words, these are people that have been hiding sequence shifts and what came before that, increasingly. And then their names get brought up by people with the boxing before the World Trade Center attack. As ones involved with increasingly people involved with the Lance Cuddy, with a place on Park Street, Alina's Pizza, and a tiki bar there, with some foreign and domestic intelligence families involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids and other natures of organized crimes with them. And they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Daryl Sullivan and people tied to him with name switching like Magdalene and Maggie, and they're not far from that Robert Chevrolet, who was one of the lawyers of a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants. And he was warned not to show up to that case without a lawyer. And there are lawyers of Wethersfield Police Chiefs, Cintron, and other police were recorded involved with criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw readings of statutes and precedents, and use/s of predicate acts methods to get away with that, while they're being used and shown needs to and means to preemptively from things past and for active reasons. Season's turn.